Hi, I'm Jez from First Coding, and as we're gearing up for a summer of creativity, I thought it would be good to list my top 5 tips for coding. So tip number 5 is don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's the only way we're going to learn. Experimenting with different ideas, learning what works, what doesn't, how things interact. Naturally, things are going to go wrong if we're putting things together to see what comes out. And I'm the same. I always make mistakes. I think the problem we have is that we're always comparing our process, what we're doing, with people's finished, polished products, not knowing that they most likely have gone through the same process we have. They would have made the same mistakes that you have. So never be afraid to experiment with a new idea, and never be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are naturally going to happen. So another tip for point 5 would be to always back up your work. Always make copies, because if the worst case scenario, you break your code, you can't recover it, you can always refer back to the backup. So don't be afraid to make mistakes, and always back up your work. Tip number 4 is start by learning the basics. Don't run before you can walk. At First Coding, we take our time to learn about the different elements, whether it's loops, whether it's variables, or functions and subroutines. We take our time to learn these important concepts. Developing lessons and writing little programs to explore what each one is capable of. It's only then, when you've learnt about these different elements, that you can start to think about bringing them together to make an awesome project. So yeah, always start with the basics. It will serve as a really good foundation, and after which you can start building on it, and the sky is literally the limits. Tip number 3 is always enjoy yourself. It won't be much fun if you find it a hard slog or your interests lie elsewhere. Don't force it. Okay, you can't force creativity, but it's important that you enjoy coding. I love coding. It allows me to explore my creativity. It allows me to develop my maths more. And there's other crossovers with other subjects as well that you'll be surprised to learn about. But if you're stuck for inspiration, start developing your own ideas. Think of an idea and think about how you would tackle it from a coding perspective. And then once you can see your ideas starting to flourish and take shape, that's when coding gets really exciting. If you're stuck for ideas, why not try and build something that already exists? Maybe have a go at Space Invaders, perhaps, or Tetris. But there are tutorials on there that First Coding provide that will allow you to give you a little helping hand in developing a coding idea of your own. Tip number 2 follows nicely on from number 3. And tip number 2 is don't be afraid to reach out for help. Whether you're stuck for inspiration, or you've made a mistake, or you've hit a brick wall and you don't know how to code round a problem, then please just reach out for help. There are a lot of online communities out there that will probably provide you with an answer, but it is a lot of searching, admittedly, sometimes, and it might feel a bit daunting reaching out into these forums for help. But don't fear. Myself and First Coding are always available to help. So we'll leave an email address in the in the description here, and you can always drop me a line if you're stuck as to how to proceed with a coding problem. Likewise, like I said, if you're stuck for inspiration as well, you can always tap us up, and we will provide you with resources or exercises to help start your creativity this summer. But yes, tip number 2 is never be afraid to reach out for help. If you have to ask a question to keep you moving, then by all means ask it. There is no such thing as a silly question. Ask your question, get the answer, and then progress. It's that simple. Don't be afraid. And that brings us to the number 1 tip. And it's really hard to put these in order, but I think tip number 1 is probably one of the most important. And that is always finish a project. Get it across the finishing line. Many times I've abandoned projects. You start with all these good intentions, you start building it up, and when it starts to get difficult, or there's a bit that's less exciting than you initially thought, it's all too easy to abandon it for another project. Believe me, getting a project across the finishing line will teach you so much about the game development process. It will teach you a great deal about seeing your idea from concept to production. It's really important that you finish the project before you move on. And it's one of the most difficult things that you can do when you're learning to code. But starting a project is really fun and exciting. Planning it as well is immensely enjoyable. But the hardest part is finishing it. And I admire people so much who get their projects across the line, because I've been there. We've all been there. But getting it finished, getting it out there is one of the best things that you can do, trust me, and you'll feel so proud of yourself. And it'll just spur you on, and you take what you've learned from that process, and the next project that you make will be even better. Trust me. Okay, so tip number 1 is always finish your projects. And there you have it. That's First Coding's top 5 tips for learning to code this summer. We hope you have a really creative and fun summer. I would love to see what you come up with. And remember, we're always on the end of an email. We're always putting new resources, new tips and tricks and documents on the website and on Facebook. So be sure to check in with us regularly. But yeah, if you'd like to show off some of your work, or you need a bit of help with anything, then please get in touch. Take care. Bye-bye.